to get on today and talk about the role of trauma in our lives and in our wider culture. I think there's a question around it about, is trauma something that is part of the human condition and has been historically, or is it something more modern and almost like a reaction to the effects of modernity? So on the two sides of that like dichotomy, I think some people who might be opposed to the contemporary focus on trauma as a site of investigation, or just the general proliferation of trauma and the language around it being happening right now with Bessel van der Kolk, his body keeps a score type stuff. IFS, of course, being touting its trauma informed nature, and there's a reaction against that sees this whole notion of trauma, the focusing on it as being part of a larger sort of social problem of people being too inwardly focused and not actually dealing with the world as it is, in essence, and having a generally wrong-headed notion that trauma is, this universal aspect of our psyches and stuff, that and not something that's modern. And I sort of take two different positions. What I'm about to advocate for is what I see as sort of a third path, a way out of the dichotomy of these ideas. Is it historical reality or modern invention? And so I would say, my third path idea basically is that it is a modern invention. It's an effect of modernity, the invention of the railroad and the telegraph, World War I happening, the first and second industrial revolutions, the genocide, slavery, desacralization of the land, rejection of animism, some of the stuff I've discussed in a previous video. All of that is very traumatic, and created, I think, a fracture in the psyche. I mean, this is what the modernists were all talking about back in the early 20th century with poems like The Second Coming, describing the center cannot hold, it's all been loosed. I can't remember the rest of the words, but Yeats' Second Coming. And so, I think that it does have a modern effect. It exists because of modernity, but that doesn't mean it's not real. And this is my, so some might extrapolate from the fact that it's invented, or the maybe discovered might be better term, I don't know, in the modern era, but that doesn't mean it's not real, because real things can be invented, basically, or discovered. And so it doesn't have to have these historical analogs, the makeup of our internal family system, for lack of a better word, could have been different in pre-modern times, when like the pace and the danger around our technologies just like made us traumatized, all of us. And so, so much of what we are trying to do in soothing ourselves is a reaction to like the daily trauma that we're encountering, not least of which is through driving. At least here in the West. Although driving in developing countries is pretty dangerous, oftentimes. So my point in this is that like parts are real because we made them real. This is what I'm getting at here. Were parts a thing in the past? Well, we don't know because no one pre-modern can talk to us. We can analyze some of their writings and that kind of thing. For some people, we can extrapolate from their actions and make inferences about how people were, but we don't know. And so this is my contention, is that like we invented parts unintentionally, basically, and then now, as a reaction to the fact that we are living in such a like traumatized world, that getting to know our parts is a way to heal them, acknowledge that they are real, and that whether we invented them or not, we can deal with them. We can get to know them. Hell, we can love them. This is the real challenge for us in personal healing and growth. Loving ourselves and our parts as they are, not wanting to change them. I'm getting into a different path here, but I think this is, to me, I'm going to go down it anyway. Like the thing we can do for anyone who might have a problem with, seeing it from their perspective, giving them the benefit of the doubt, trusting them. This is what we have to do for ourselves. And I think that goes against a lot of the messages we receive from society, that we do need to change. We need to change our habits. We need to change our mindset to be healthy, to finally be happy. But the real truth, to me, the most important change is to see that we don't have to change, that we can be who we love right now, as we are, with our flaws, with our bad habits, with everything that we want to change, being as it is. And that kind of grace that we can afford ourselves is a model for the kind of grace we can afford other people, to understand that what we're all experiencing every day, when we step outside, when we get into our car, when we open our phone or computer, that these are daily traumas, and that when we encounter people who are angry, who are bitter, who are resentful and upset. These are people who are operating within what amounts to a psychic prison, which is a big loaded term and a scary one. And it suggests that we are in one too. And so this is to me where iboga, any kind of plant medicine, any kind of visionary experience, meditation, dream analysis, the use of divination tools, connecting with other people, in a program of recovery, or even in a religious setting, like with some caveats, that these things like provide us an opportunity to see a way out of that psychic prison, to see that, like, just as we don't have to change anything about ourselves, the way out of the psychic prison is to change your view of it. One way out, I would say. And I think that's what something like a visionary experience with iboga, practiced like meditation that induces visionary experiences, these extant visions that they show us, that like the truth is that we're not actually in a psychic prison. We're actually in what Christians would call the Garden of Eden. We never left. That's where we're at. That's what the world is. It's a place that was built to grow life. It is Eden. Wherever you are in the world, you are in Eden. We may have changed it, and certainly in some places it feels like the exact opposite of Eden, which we know what that is. But that doesn't mean that this place is not Eden. It is. The world is. And the task of seeing it as such, I think, is what gives a path out of the daily trauma of living in a world that's so disconnected from spirituality, from connection to others, a world that seems to try to suppress curiosity and creativity, try to make us less confident, less courageous, less connected, that brings our calm down and our anxiety up, and that doesn't value compassion, like places the value of comfort, personal comfort, over compassion for others and ourselves. Like, this is what we have to contend with, and we have to try to find a way out of. And the way, this is the crazy paradox of it, of course, though, is that the way out is to say, I am not in it. Is to sit and meditate or do something that allows you to have a self-led experience of seeing that, no, I am not in a psychic prison, and I'm using my mind, my body, and my spirit to prove to myself and the world, to those around me and myself, that I am not in a psychic prison. I am, this is what I think our highest self wants, free. And how, this is the thing that I'm personally struggling with, I would say, is that feels like, to me, like that's step one, and then what comes after that is like the act of being a free person. How does a free person act? And we don't have too many models for that. At least I don't see, not the kind of freedom that I'm talking about, at least. Our model for what we consider to be freedom is generally means that you're able to afford to live a free life because you have enough money. Like literally, it's the vulgar kind of thing of that, which makes sense because our society is all based around, the acquisition of money and the trading of money for things that make us feel comforted. But to me, the real freedom is freedom from the psychic prison, to where or at least for the work that I do on a daily basis is built around the framework, essentially, of the 8 C's of IFS, that I was just mentioning: courage, compassion, curiosity, creativity, calm, connectedness, whatever the other ones are. That's to me, and it's possible to live that, no matter what you're doing, is the thing, and still have a vision for doing that even more in the future. And so, this is to me the way to contend with the traumatizing effects of the world, is to try to shift our perspective in the here and now to being able to live moment by moment in some embodying one of those 8 C's, some quality of calm, connectedness, courage, compassion, curiosity, because we can be doing that moment by moment. And I think that by doing that, this is my hope for myself and my clients, is to then turn that into a vision for life, for being able to embody those 8 C's all the time in what we do, and have it redound to some positive benefit that makes us feel makes ourself know, helps ourself show to our parts that we are free. That is ultimately, I think, a worthwhile goal in using IFS and Iboga. I don't know if it's the worthwhile goal. It may not be for everybody, but I think that is for me, and that's sort of the idea of liberatory, a liberatory framework. That's what I mean. That's why on my website it says radically liberating. I feel like I might be repeating something. I'm probably repeating a lot, but that's how it can be radically liberating, at least in my estimation. And by it, I mean the process of getting to know our parts, talking about our parts, and getting in touch with our system, our body, our mind, our spirit, trying to work on being self-led, and that connection with ourself internally not being a solipsistic affair, not being something that is a selfish endeavor only, but that it actually fills us with enough self-energy and love that we're able to share that freely with those around us, and it not diminish us in any way, that we have plenty enough to give and more to have for ourselves at the same time. Toni Morrison says that we think love is a gift we give to others, but really it's a gift we give ourselves. And I'm almost sure I said that in a previous video. I say it a lot. I tell myself that a lot. And I tell other people that a lot too, because there's something deeply true about that. When she's commenting on like a really profound feeling we have, that we have to receive love from someone else to make us feel whole. We have to give love to someone else to prove that we love them, to prove something to ourselves about what love means. I don't know, but the real trick is to like have that same compassion for ourselves. And the difference between that kind of gift of love for ourselves and a solipsistic desire to please oneself is that giving love to ourselves, we don't have to do that at the expense of anyone else. But if we're out to find pleasure for ourselves, then we're actually not in a self-led way. That's not compassion for ourselves or others. Because we would be acting from a part. So when we're self-led, the kind of love we show to ourselves is a love that's connected to other people. That doesn't further disconnect us from other people by focusing merely on pleasure. Which, of course, is difficult because via the traumatizing effects of the technology in our society, like the device I'm using right now to speak alone in a room to a machine, we're so easily disconnected from other people, and the whole structure of our society seems arranged to do just exactly that. So it can be so hard to not seek some kind of sensual pleasure to calm the parts of us that feel triggered and agitated by the almost enforced isolation of technology such as what I'm using right now. And this is one of the things that I think the Bwiti have to show us if we are interested in Iboga and Bwiti, that they work together for everything, and that's in part out of necessity, but it's also because they've learned from the ancestors, from the plant, from experience, that working together is the way that people should act. The in Bwiti connection is built in, and this is the thing about the connection, is sometimes it can get overbearing, everyone being around. So I'm sure that, for plenty of the people who I met when I was in Libreville, the idea of a little bit of privacy probably sounds pretty nice, but at the same time, there's always a trade-off. Everything comes at a cost, and in the West, relationship to technology allows us to not have relationships to other people, whereas with the Bwiti, their relationship with each other makes it so that it doesn't have it's not technologically mediated. It's not technologically mediated, and so there remains in their culture and society retains humanness that is unfortunately more and more absent from our own, and that in itself is traumatic, and why I think to live here in the West is to constantly be approaching those around you with forgiveness in your heart, because they, I mean, to quote Jesus Christ, they know not what they do. You know, like, and that the same is true for me as well. You know, and why I also deserve forgiveness. And this is, I think, what we have to like be able to say to ourselves. And this goes back to, you know, the like maxim that the Bwiti say, that you must treat yourself as though you were your own child, you know. And to do that, I mean, I think like speaks to what you think children need, you know. Because if you think children need to be punished and disciplined in order to make them comply or be good, you know, then doing that to yourself would be the right thing to do. But if you think that children like deserve forgiveness and compassion and understanding, then like that would be the right thing to do for yourself, you know. And that's what I think. Certainly when I was a child, that's what I would have preferred people give me, rather than harsh discipline and punishment. And, you know, in many ways I'm very lucky, because I do have very like wonderful parents who like did not, you know, treat me that way. Not all of us, of course, are so lucky, and you know, I feel that like privilege, you know, of having loving parents. Like, even though I did, of course, suffer trauma as a result of my relationships with my parents and my parents' divorce and this kind of thing. But, you know, like, the parts that are created when we're younger are how we can see ourselves as our own child, you know. I mean, hell, this is like what they talk about in ACA, adult children of alcoholics. So like getting to know your inner child or your inner children is like just a great healing modality, I think, you know. And it's one that is totally consistent with what the Bwiti say. And so like that to me is like why I think it makes so much sense to like invest in the notion of parts, getting to know parts, and why like this is what I love about the Bwiti stuff. There's a physical relationship to a plant that gives you access to mental and spiritual notions that like are so mind expanding and so consciousness connecting, that like the reality of parts is undeniable as a result of it. That's what it was for me, you know. This is what I'm saying. And so like my experience with Iboga gave me insights into my life and who I was. And then after that, when I heard and learned about IFS, internal family systems therapy, it was like easy for me to see how parts are so real, and how interacting with parts is like a great way to heal from past trauma by getting to know these younger parts, and manifest visions for the future by getting our parts to help guide us. Well, getting not our parts, really getting ourself to guide us, to investing in ourself, having our parts trust ourself, and ourself guiding us toward the future. And like, I know, just to say something about time for a moment here and parts, like this is what I personally think regarding the relationship of self and parts to time. So our self, like, is our oldest, the oldest will ever be. Our self is always older than all of our parts. And this is why, like, when we, like, if you're ever doing IFS and you go to try to talk to a part, one of the things that they will tell you to do in the literature, in No Bad Parts, Dick Schwartz talks about this, and if you ever work with me or any other, person who is practicing IFS informed practices, then when you encounter a part, one of the things to do is to ask that part, how old are you? And then also ask them, how old do you think I am? And when you hear something, if the part says, I'm elementary school age, and I think you're 17, that number pops into your head, 17. So that part thinks you're 17, and then you can say to that part, I am 44 years old. Something like that. If that's however old you are. I'm 44 years old. So then, but here's the thing, is that you can't say, a part of me thinks I'm 44 years old. Like, that's a nonsensical statement. I am 44 years old. Only my highest self can say that. That is a statement made by the oldest part of me, the part that exists entirely in the present moment. So this is what I think our self does. So our self, with a capital S, exists constantly in the present moment. Always. It's always in the present moment. But our parts exist in the past. They were all formed in the past. And so, and many of them, the ones that are traumatized, exiles, or the protective parts around an exile, they often will be stuck in time, stuck in that moment, thinking that they're still 5 years old, 12 years old, something like that. And when we get to know them, they can learn, oh, I might be 5 years old in here, but that's okay, first of all. And like, I have somebody now, myself, who's an adult, who's going to help take care, and I don't have to inhabit this role anymore of trying to protect this adult. I'm just a kid. Why am I trying to protect this adult? This is, I think, the mindset we want our parts to have once they start to realize, that they can trust ourself. They relinquish a bit of that control that they're trying to have over us and allow our highest self to lead the way, and that they can sit back and do what they want to do. Honestly, we have a whole subconscious mind that, like, our parts can exist in a non-triggered state, But I digress. So my point in saying this, what the hell was it? Oh yeah. Past, present, future. So our highest self exists in the present, parts exist in the past. And so, but when using ourself, because it's so magical, basically, that when we do IFS, we can go into the past using our highest self to get to know these parts, to help heal, unburden, acknowledge, witness these parts. But then our highest self can also go into the future. And this is what manifesting our visions is. That we, through meditation or some sort of, extant visionary practice, we could reach forward to allow our intuition to help take us down a path that will guide us to the self that most aligns with our purpose. And this is, to me, like the real ultimate goal of so much of our healing is we heal these parts in the past so that we can guide ourselves, allow ourselves to guide us toward this vision, of us in the future that will align with our purpose. How do we do that? This is the quandary so many people find themselves in, I think, without even having the language to describe it sometimes. But if you're on a healing path, if you've taken steps toward doing healing, various healing modalities and things like that, then you're already doing it, and this is there's so many paradoxes in this stuff, but the idea of inhabiting that highest self is basically saying, I've already done it. This is Joe Dispenza is on about this stuff. That's the mindset, of trying to manifest a vision, and all of this is I'm inhabiting that version of myself that has already done the thing that I want to do, and I don't have to stress about, am I going to do it or not? Well, I've already done it, even though it's in the future. I don't know. To me, this is now where I'm getting the struggle with trying to manifest visions of the future is getting hung up on outcomes. That we want the outcome to be what we envision. And if the outcome is different than what we envision, then we messed up. We didn't do it right. We did something wrong. We pissed someone off. We even engaged in a curse or got cursed or something like that. That's our catastrophic thinking can go toward that. But I would say the antidote to that, of course, is what I've started off talking about, which is that the greatest change we can ever make in our perspective about ourselves is to realize that we don't actually have to change at all. That the change is not really something we need to be too concerned about. It's gonna happen, it's happening every day. Stuff's always changing, as we know. Thank you, Octavia Butler, any Earthseed people out there. This change is all, it's the only constant, and so but the way that we can get curious about life and want to make have fun being alive, is to make changes happen that we are afraid to. That's, to me, the part, another way out of this psychic prison that I was talking about, is we do unexpected things. We do things that are healthy risks to show the universe that we're down for whatever, not really wedded to any outcome. We're just here to lead an interesting life, lead a life that is good for us and those around us, a connected life, a curious life, calm, courageous, confident, compassionate life, and the other C's as well. Like, so